In our age of ideology, genuinely honest speech is likely to appear alien to us. People are usually out to convince us of one view as opposed to another. They tend to tell us what to do, how to do it, instead of helping us understand the nature of our problems. Now, we're not speaking here about theoretical physics that seeks a purely theoretical understanding of things. That notion, that project is deceptive insofar as theoretical physics today stands on the basis of certain conceptions of reality, of the universe, a modern conception of what is material, of thought, fundamentally a materialist ontology, a view of things that is not questioned, principles that are not questioned. Whereas genuinely honest speech seeks an understanding of the foundation, what we stand upon. It does not seek to build on any foundation, but to illuminate our foundation. Now, the formal question that we're out to address here is whether Christians can be Nazi. Can a man be at the same time a Christian and a Nazi? And in the modern world, this is eminently possible. We need not appeal to St. Paul, who says that I know what is right, what is good, and yet I do what is evil, what is wrong, in order to appreciate that in the 1930s, Nazi could quite comfortably celebrate Christmas. They could have a traditional looking Christmas celebration. They could all sit at the table and recite their prayers. This happened. You would have soldiers coming back from the death camp, having worked hard throughout the day, efficiently, to execute orders. And then they would come back home and celebrate Christmas. Now, how is such a thing possible? Is there no contradiction there? Well, of course, one might say there's a huge contradiction, but in order to understand why these situations occur, we should recognize that we live as modern people. And as modern people, we assume that as Christians, we believe certain things. We cherish certain beliefs. Now, these beliefs do not necessarily, in fact, no belief, necessarily contradict our way of life, our behavior. And the reason is quite simple. The reason is that our behavior is shaped by a certain interpretation of data, shall we say, of beliefs. Now, according to a modern interpretation of beliefs, we can cherish, we can hold on to certain religious beliefs, and these are intimate, they're private. They do not help us define our course of action in practical life. They are private. So then we move out of the private and we move into the public sphere, where we can be Nazi. You say, well, but um, uh, Nazi is not good. Yes, but it's necessary. So some things we recognize as being bad, but necessary. Somewhat Machiavellian as an attitude. They're necessary evils. So we must be Nazi today, awaiting for the end of time, awaiting for God to intervene, to save us from necessary evils. But evil is necessary. We must make a living, for goodness sake. We have to secure our solid foundation in order to then be able to go to church on Sundays. This is the way we can be Nazis and Christians at the same time. Now, one might say that it is good to raise children in traditional Christian values and uh, take them to a solid Christian uh, school where they teach those values, those beliefs, that these beliefs will save them from falling prey to evil, outright evil. Well, this is not necessarily the case at all. In fact, one might argue that these beliefs um, somehow justify for us our evil conduct. We say, well, evil is a necessity of life that goes hand in hand with church going. On Sunday, I purge myself and then I go back to doing evil. How does that work out for you? Fine. I clear my conscience on Sunday, and the rest of the week, I'm a Nazi. Not because I enjoy it. No Nazi really enjoyed burning bodies in ovens. It was a necessary evil. The times called for it. Eugenics, the times called for it. Social engineering, the times called for it. We had to build a new, better, brighter world. And evil was sometimes, alas, necessary, historically necessary to advance. Now, we should not be excited or cheerful about this. We're carrying our cross. We must endure this participation in evil. But at the same time, it is essential that we go to church on Sunday to cleanse our souls, right? So that eventually we can go to heaven. That's lovely. But is there an alternative to indulging in necessary evil? How is religion today not an excuse, a justification for evil? Well, you say, well, why don't we just get rid of that religion as a justification for evil? And then what do we have? Outright, shameless evil. What we have is, at that point, technocracy. What we have is the consummation of the Nazi modernist project. We build a new world, and since there is no religious other world, it is imperative that we execute whatever orders we have, whatever directives, that we live by regulations that can allow us to build this new world, to solve the problem of injustice, of prejudice, of hatred, of bigotry. We can solve all of this by applying those rules, by living by those rules. And so We build up this Leviathan, this technocratic Leviathan, beyond otherworldly concerns. We establish a world as a system where prejudice is gone, the human element, the fallen element. We overcome the fall in biblical terms, in technical, strictly technical terms. Right. So we established a purely technical, inhuman world in which all humanity is resolved as a problem. We have solved the human problem once and for all through the machine. The machine has effectively replaced the human. The Deus ex machina, the God from the machine, or the mechanical God. Lovely. So we are now devils and we are satisfied with it, as opposed to being devils who are mildly satisfied with the setup. Dissatisfied with the evil, they realize that it's evil, but they have to do it because they're Christian. Is there a way out of this false dichotomy between the ideological use of religion and, well, the ideological riddance of religion? And the classical answer is, of course, yes, there is an answer. First of all, the answer does not lie in any belief, in any ideological use or trashing of religion. It lies in hermeneutics. In other words, the art of interpretation. Hermes, Mercury, the interpreter of the gods. Or the, shall we say, the middleman between the gods and men. So the problem is one of interpretation. How do we interpret our beliefs? And interpretation, in a classical sense, can be and is fundamentally an opening up of beliefs to their foundations, to their roots. So it's essentially non-ideological. But this is all alien to our ear because we're so used to assuming that there is no such thing as an interpretation that is rationally open to, so in discourse, open to an understanding of the foundations of our conduct and thus of our liberty. The early founding fathers of the modern world argue that there is no such openness, dialogical, rational openness to the foundations of our life. We just had to admit abstract, theoretical, symbolic principles to our conduct and then work with them. Now, if we have other principles we can come up with, so be it. But we just have to accept certain principles simply because they work. They work for what? Not to help us understand, but to help us build a new world. And so, here we go. Here we have it. Christians must be allowed to be Nazi. If they're not allowed to be Nazi, then they must be fundamentalists, they must be bigots, they must be horrible people full of hatred. A Christian who does not allow himself to be a Nazi, or to be a neo-Nazi, which is to say a globalist today, is a bad Christian. He is a threat to our society. He is a very dangerous man. He is an alien that we need to rid ourselves of as soon as possible.